All fixie stuff.
The Atari Jaguar, the 64-bit console that obviously wasn't. Atari decided that two separate 32-bit components added together equaled 64 bits. A real flaw in the math there, Atari. Poor sales and a very limited software library caused the Jaguar to flop. This is a PAL machine from the UK, and as such runs at 50Hz, slower than its American siblings running at 60Hz. But we're going to change that by adding a 50-60Hz switch. Then we're going to look at some before and after examples at the end of the video. So let's get this kitty open. 4 screws on the bottom. And the lid lifts right off quite easily. Underneath there's an absolute monster of an RF shield. Let's work our way around and get this opened up. So many tabs. Luckily, this tool is handy for levering them up without breaking my fingernails. So many tabs. So many tabs. The top of the shield can now be removed. Although, it does need a bit of massaging to get it off. But don't we all? And now the full board is revealed in all its glory. But wait, I can see a potential problem. There's some kind of residue around this capacitor. It could be leaking, but it could also be old flux. There is a way to test, however, a literal acid test. I'm going to use some spirit vinegar. If we put the acidic vinegar on the crud and its capacitor leakage, it'll fizz like crazy. If it doesn't fizz, well, it's just crud. No fizzing equals just crud. Happy days. Time to clean this vinegar off with some IPA and a cotton bud. This is a 68K processor here, a processor intended just for port control. A lot of programmers ended up using the 68K because they were more used to that chip. The Tom CPU and Jerry GPU being more difficult to program for and quite buggy. Build quality on the board is superb, like most Atari machines. There are only 4 screws holding the main board in. 2 at the front, and 2 here on either side of the cart slot. Note, they're different colours. The lower shield is now free of the case. Being mindful of the bent tabs, we can now remove the board entirely from the shielding. To perform this modification, we need to find the R140 point on the underside of the board. We'll fit a switch to these 2 points so that we can easily return to PAL 50 mode. You'll often find a 0 ohm resistor linking the pads. We'll need to remove this. I have 2 wires long enough to reach the back of the console. Now we need my soldering iron, a wire cutter and stripper, my spool of rosin core solder, and my soldering tip cleaner. Time to start stripping. Don't tell the neighbours. These will fit great. Let's tin these up for easier soldering and get this 0 ohm link out of the way. Using anti-static tweezers and my needle point soldering iron, the link comes away really easily. Just time to reflow the pads before a brush with IPA and soldering on the wires. I'm just going to tack these on lightly so the mod can be easily reversed if needed. The wires are really firmly attached to the board. I'm going to use some Kapton tape to insulate the solder points. Polyamide tape is a really effective insulator. Once the adhesive has had time to cure, it'll stick really well to the board. Just gently trimming off the excess. Now to strip the other end of the wires. It would have made sense to have stripped these before, but I forgot. Wires stripped, no problem. Now, this switch isn't the most suitable, but I don't want to drill the case on the Jaguar. I decided to modify this one so it can be used externally for this experiment. With those tabs bent down, we'll need to insulate the metal case of the switch itself. Whoops, it doesn't fit. Never mind. You might say this technique is a bit of a stretch. And in it goes. With a bit of gentle persuasion. I'm just gently trimming the top of the shrink sleeve down so that it can form better around the switch case. Heating the sleeve makes it shape around the switch nicely. Now let's remove these unneeded contacts. Job done there. Let's solder onto the switch. And pop some thin shrink sleeving onto the wires. Soldering onto the two contacts. Then with some hard rubber cement, we can insulate the bottom of the switch. Time to move the sleeving up and insulate the contacts. Let's reassemble the console, taking care to feed the switch out of the back of the shield and Jaguar shell. After reassembly, I'll be able to tuck the switch into the recess or move it out of the way of any accessories. This modification is really easy to reverse and put the console back into its original form. With the outer shell of the Jaguar, we need to place the pad ports in before the rear of the shield, so we need to be a bit careful with our switch. There, all seated nicely. Just a final check that my floating switch can be hidden easily. Great. A more savage mod on a PAL console is to remove the modulator can and use the hole for a 15mm circular panel mount switch, but not today. Replacing the two front mainboard screws. These are the silver ones, and you can see I'm backing off to find the thread before screwing them down. This plastic is decades old, so you really want to be using the existing thread and not cutting a new one. The two black rear screws go back on either side of the cart slot. Try not to over tighten these and damage the plastic. With the shield back on, it's time to do the twist again. So many tabs. So many tabs. So many tabs! The top shell is replaced on the Jaguar. And a protective cloth is placed on the bench. And the outer shell screws are also all replaced. The fit of the switch is fine for our purposes. For our testing, we'll be using this RGB SCART cable from Cool Novelties. The PSU is the original Jaguar part, and we'll also be using the programmable skunk board from Zaxxon, reviewed previously on this channel. And of course, the dinner plate size Atari controller with its numeric keypad and non-existent ergonomics. Okay, the moment of truth. In this example, I've filmed twice from a static camera pointed at the screen. The left-hand side is the original 50Hz PAL and the right-hand side is 60Hz PAL. You can see here that not only does the left-hand side have large borders masked with graphics, but the intro on the right-hand side runs faster and finishes significantly more quickly than the left. There's no contest there. But how does this translate into gameplay? Well, for a start, the playfield is larger on screen. The programmers have made efforts to hide the huge borders with textures, but the comparison is quite shocking. The game also runs a bit faster, like the intro did, with the character animations, shooting and jumping being quicker and smoother. Bye, Harry. Pinball Dreams, however, is a mixed blessing. For all intents, the 60Hz version has a slightly smaller playfield when compared with the 50Hz version. But that niggle is soon negated by the fact that the game runs so much more smoothly, and the speed of the 60Hz version is much more realistic. The 60Hz ball physics feel so much more accurate to real life and make the 50Hz version feel very sluggish. No need to introduce this game, it's the classic shooter Doom. Right off the bat, we can see that the play area is hugely compressed in the 50Hz version, with the 60Hz version filling the entire screen. The game plays much more smoothly in 60Hz as well. .60Hz is a clear winner for me here. Finally, let's test Alien versus Predator.
Got a hold of this guy.
Again, we see that huge difference in on-screen playfield size. I'm not sure if the game runs any more quickly, but once I saw the 60Hz mode, I couldn't bear to play in the squashed 50Hz PAL mode anymore. Well, that's my findings, but what are your thoughts? Is it worth the mod? A big thanks to my wonderful Patreon members who make these videos possible. Subscribe to get your fix and hit my bell for notifications. Maybe you'd like to watch one of these other videos. Bye.